Nobody move.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Environmental Justice Now. My name is Leah Jones, and I am the Education Coordinator here at Virginia Interfaith Power and Light. Thanks so much for tuning in again for another episode this week. Before we get started, though, today, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. While we are all on a video, while we are on video call, and many of us are joining from different places, we want to remind ourselves that we gather on unceded land of the indigenous peoples. I am joining from so-called Richmond, Virginia, and I am currently located on the land of the Powhatan and Chickahominy peoples. If you are unsure whose land you are on and want to find out, you can visit native-land.ca to find out. So back to the show. On today, we will be recapping and reflecting on the first ever environmental justice gathering that we were able to host just this past Wednesday and Thursday. It's been a busy week, to say the least. To share more about what I feel like was a genuinely impactful, intentful, and just all around lovely event. We are also joined by a couple of other familiar faces who were working to put this event together. We have Kades Bray, our organizing coordinator. Hey, Kades, alongside Emily Piantek. She is the Energy Democracy Field Coordinator at Appalachian Voices. Thanks for being here today, y'all. Welcome. Emily, I think this is your first time on Environmental Justice Now, so welcome to you. How are y'all doing today?
Hi, Leah. Thanks for having us. It's always great to be on the show. I'm doing good, and I'm excited to be here to reflect on what we were able to accomplish this week.
Yeah, echoing Kades, thanks for having me on the show. I'm happy to be here. Also doing well. Happy it's Friday, especially now that the Environmental Justice Retreat is behind us. That was a big lift, especially for you all. So thanks very much for putting that on.
Right, definitely. Like I said, also happy that it's Friday, busy week. But I know we stated what the event was, the Environmental Justice Virtual Convening, the first one. Can you all just start by telling folks at home who are watching a little bit more about what the event was, how it came to be, and what the intent of the event was? Kades, do you want to take it first?
Yeah, sure. So, the intent of creating that space was, to dive deeper, but build a deeper understanding of environmental justice among critical Virginia decision makers who we rely on to help us reform Virginia's environmental, energy, and climate policy. The Virginia Climate Equity Working Group, CEWG, got together to sponsor this event because we believed in advancing environmental justice among our decision makers, right? And so I wish our co-director, Faith Harris, was here with us to kind of talk about how the vision started. But this was, a big vision that our co-directors, Reverend Dr. Faith Harris and Kendall Crawford, had to kind of get our decision makers together and really reflect on what environmental justice is and really understand the cumulative impacts of environmental justice, but also really dive deeper into understanding energy justice in general, right? Talking about just transition as well as energy democracy and understanding, all different regions of the Commonwealth are covered in environmental protection. And so I understood this vision came to be from a conversation they had, to reflect and uplift environmental justice, and recognizing that policy is one of the places that Virginia was leading on in environmental justice in the South, but we can come together to strengthen it. So they wanted to create this space to kind of feel safe and talk about how we can advance environmental justice together. So that's how the retreat came to be, right? But as we all know, COVID is really impacting our lives in a heavy way. So after the Delta variant announcement, we decided to kind of change it into a virtual gathering. And we're really grateful for all the legislators that attended and took time out of their busy, busy day to be able to drop by and understand these issues better, and, dive deeper into understanding environmental justice. Emily, you want to add to anything?
Yeah, I think that was a great recap, Kadest. I guess I would just also add that I think one of the primary purposes of this event was to engage with legislators in a setting outside of the General Assembly or legislative sessions, so we can really start to have these conversations about environmental justice and the different aspects of policy that relate to it, and that legislators have the ability to influence before we're even talking about specific pieces of legislation. So to get those conversations started early, and to help, build rapport and trust between us and some legislators that we hope can be champions on these issues in the coming years.
Yeah, I definitely think that even just from being a person working behind the scenes, being a person who was able to kind of enjoy the event as it was happening, I definitely think creating that safe space was able to happen even virtually. And I think that furthermore, it allowed us to see how necessary that space actually was. Having a space, like you said, Emily, outside of the General Assembly, for us to have real conversations, larger picture conversations, to really begin breaking down what it is we're fighting for, and try to hopefully all get on the same page, even with our legislators, which I know a lot of the times can be sometimes a headache, right? But I think the energy was just great, and everyone came in with great intentions as well, and understood that it was a safe space. And I think we were able to have some really great conversations around those issue areas that you mentioned earlier, Kadesh, like energy burden, energy justice, and other important legislation that we should be addressing in the near future, like just transition. So that being said, what do you all feel are some of your favorite moments that you can recall on from the retreat? What was most memorable for you all, looking back now?
I can go first. Not to sound a little cliche, but we kind of opened the retreat in a really big way, or the virtual gathering in a really big way, with Dr. Walker being the opening speaker, and there was a lot of messaging about how the work that we do is not just about changing environmental justice. It's not, it's a vision of uplifting humanity and making sure every human person, every human or a person has a dignity to live the life that they feel like, that's justified, right? So that's with clean air, clean water, access to proper transportation, and everything that makes life worth living. And so that kind of big picture moment was really like what kind of hit me, because I really think a lot of times when we try to advance policy, we kind of miss, since we are so down to the details and the numbers and the budget, we kind of miss why we're fighting for this policy, right? So he kind of opened up with that broad view of why environmental justice is important to advance sustainable lives, right? Sustainable communities, and protect our earth in doing so. So that was kind of my favorite moment. And it was also a moment where a lot of folks were chiming in and asking a lot of questions about, what are the implications of environmental justice, right? It's about health and the lives of people, and the lives of our, and I guess the health of our planet. So that kind of opened up our conversation in a really big way to kind of think about beyond policy, right? Beyond what could be done in policy, but what are the implications of why we're here today? So that was really kind of my favorite moment, one of my favorite moments, I would say.
Yeah, just seconding Eucadest with Dr. Corey Walker's kind of opening plenary. I thought he was really inspiring, and it was great to hear him kind of contextualize this moment that we're living through, not just now, but kind of in the longer timeline of people working to achieve justice in various realms. He also spent a lot of time focusing on the work of deep democracy and how important that is to the environmental justice work that we're doing, as well as just what he called substantive justice, but just this broader framework that incorporates environmental justice and climate justice and all of these things that we care so much about, and just kind of drawing a through line between all of that. So that was really a great kickoff to the event. I think another moment that stands out was on our first day. We had some researchers from the University of California talking about some EJ mapping that they had done for us to show where environmental justice communities exist across Virginia and the kinds of impacts that they're facing, health risks, pollutant risks, things like that. And so he presented this map that shows where these EJ communities are located and the kinds of risks they're facing. And then there was this great exchange between Senator Favola and Delegate Hudson, who really wanted to understand how they could use the tool to influence policy, particularly at the local level. And I thought that was a really powerful moment. And I witnessed that a couple times throughout the event, just the legislators that we had on, like talking to each other and asking questions of each other and actively trying to figure out how they could influence environmental justice in their constituency and then across Virginia as well. So that was a really powerful moment for me.
Definitely. Those were both definitely great moments. I also have to second the opening. It was the perfect way to kick things off, help people tap into themselves, and really start to think about the way that they see the world. It provided a greater, framework and, a thought of restructuring the way that we have always done things, and like really considering, like I said, deep democracy and how that applies here in the work that we do every day, and how we can work more together. So that was definitely my favorite. But overall, just in general, what I loved about the event as well was the balance that I felt like was existing between conversations, like almost motivational, inspirational, to provide you the energy that you needed, to be excited about making real change, being a part of real change. I think a lot of the times doing this work, it's really easy to get kind of bogged down, especially if you've been in the trenches for so long, or you're saying the same things over and over again, or you're finding difficulty finding places to agree on policy, legislation, that type of thing. So just first recognizing that we're all on the same page and bringing energy around, we can make things happen in our state and our localities. Like, it's possible. That being there, but also just with really great information. Like, I think there were some really informative sessions. Like you mentioned, Emily, the EJ mapping session was great. I thought on the second day also, we had some really great sessions around just transition. There was a really awesome panel that I think provided really great information. And then to just close out the day, well, with Kendall's closing, but then also before that, Dr. Sakobi Wilson's presentation was like giving us so much energy and enthusiasm around what was happening in our state and providing the urgency. Also adding on to the urgency that Dr. Walker was talking about in the very beginning. So definitely great. I enjoyed that. And I thought it made the event pretty well rounded, even for it to be virtual. So that was excellent. But I also want to ask you all now, you've touched on this already a bit, but what do you all feel have been some of the benefits or impacts of an event like this? I know you've already mentioned the safe space, obviously, a time for folks to have real conversations, but what do you feel like are some other benefits or impacts?
I can go. Yeah, I think one of the benefits that I see is just this was a space where we were able to really take some time to break down some of these complicated issues related to energy burdens and show how environmental justice relates to high energy bills that people are facing and how we can try to address those problems, and also talking a little bit about procedural justice concerns related to the way that our energy system is structured, and making sure that people, regular people who are paying their electric bills, like have an opportunity to influence how decisions about their rates and things that impact them are being made. And I think something I've heard from legislators in the past is kind of, and they've been curious about connections between environmental justice and some of the utility reform work that we're engaged in. And so this was a great space to help break that down a little bit. So I'm hoping that we can continue that conversation. I hope that is just the beginning, and we can continue this conversation for the upcoming legislative session and beyond. And as well as with some of the just transition presentations that we had on day two, I think, personally, when I think of just transition, I think a lot of times of coalfield communities, so communities who are facing mine closures and things related to the downturn of the coal industry. But I think our panelists there made it really clear that those impacts are happening across the state. We have power plants located not just in the southwest part of Virginia, but elsewhere. And so there are communities kind of across this whole geographic area that are impacted by the transition to clean energy, and how we can be thinking about all of those communities as we move forward. So I think, just that's drawing those connections, I think, for legislators in a space that's represented by a multitude of organizations is really powerful.
I think you summarized it pretty well, Emily. And I think the one of the purpose of this event was to educate and shift, a core set of like really progressive Virginia legislators on issues on climate equity, and create a body of more knowledgeable and strategic, committed elected officials to talk about climate justice and energy justice. And so and I feel like that is what we saw that day. Oh, those past 2 days, we saw legislators really eager to learn more and connect the issues of climate justice or climate change to public health, right? And that's and we saw folks taking notes, asking for presentation slides, and wanting to learn more so that they can have that knowledge to back up all these policy changes that we're wanting to push forward, right? Why these they were able to easily connect why these issues were really important in a policy way, as well as just as just to advance the life and sustain the lives of people, everyday people, right? Especially when we're thinking of transitioning our economy, and we know, we won't be able to sustain our economy on fossil-based industries and extractive industries, and as we are transitioning, making sure everyone is included, making sure our economy is inclusive of every community, and that that message was really there, and a lot of folks really took on that message and even took notes, right? And I'm really glad that we had such awesome and really I would say intrigued and interested legislators show up and take notes, and participate and ask questions. So that was that. I believe that was the intention, and I saw that happen in my eyes with my eyes. So I was really happy.
Same. I always get very excited when I see people are active in the chat and active, excited to ask questions. It's really good to see that. Uh, Honestly, it's good to see people caring. And making the effort. So I think this event, bringing that out, was really a treat to see. Um, with that being said, though, what do you all feel like? We talked about the benefits. So now do you feel, uh, were there any opportunities, or are there any opportunities for growth, or what changes would we consider or should we consider for future retreats? I know one major downfall we already mentioned was Madam COVID making an appearance and disrupting plans once again. So that took away from, you know, an in-person, the energy around an in-person event, and we tried our best to transition that virtually, which I think we did a great job with. But do you all feel like there are any other opportunities for growth or changes you've thought about since the retreat?
Yeah, I can just offer one or two hopes for future legislative retreats like this focusing on environmental justices. Number one, I think we had some great participation from legislators who have kind of demonstrated their commitment to environmental justice, as well as maybe some newer faces. But obviously, we would like to see that cohort expand. And so to have even more legislative participation at future events and more staff on board, I think would be a number one goal. Number two, I guess, would just be a venue or forum to kind of have deeper conversations, so not just the presentations and Q&A, but then really kind of getting into the details with policymakers on the specific priorities they mentioned, the ones that we have in the climate equity work group and elsewhere. So two big takeaways for me.
Yeah, I would like to echo that and say that deeper connection of, just having that one-on-one networking time, to talk about how can this actually be done, what are the real life implications, and, how can we actually sit down and talk about our policy priorities, how can we move those forward. Those questions weren't really covered in the virtual setting because, a lot of folks were hopping in and out, and also it's just, we didn't have enough time to kind of fit that in. So I would echo what Emily's saying, if we have more staff on board or more capacity, that would definitely be something that we can accomplish. And especially if this was in person, I know we've said this before, but if this was in person, right, that connection can be made organically, right? So virtual connections are great, but I know in person and understanding, folks' these issues in person would be uh, a great opportunity for growth.
Yeah, I know it's so frustrating about the virtual thing because also I remember Faith mentioning one thing that she knows. Um, she was looking forward to with the event when it was originally planned in person, with the original vision, was even small things like folks gathering around the table together and just having, like you said, organic conversations that just come up, or the presenters or panelists are sitting with legislators. And so you end up having more in depth conversations around those important issue areas. And they don't feel like, how it sometimes can feel like these are the bullet points of what should be happening. And these are the steps that need to be taken. It's more of a conversation, and if you don't understand, I can teach you. It's an opportunity to learn and an opportunity for conversation and an opportunity to build. So that's also definitely something that I feel like should not go unnoted. Just it's something that resonated with me that Faith said as well. Now, my last question for you all today was just what do you all hope that legislators and other attendees were able to take away from the event over the past 2 days? I know a lot has been mentioned already, but if you could give us your overall, what are some things that you hope legislators as well as other attendees took away? Could that start, Emily? Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I think, the biggest vision for the retreat is, to kind of advance climate and energy justice in the 2022 legislative session, but also beyond, right? Talk about how, because a lot of the discussions that were brought up was, a lot of a lot of the work that we need to do to create meaningful change will take time, right? And so, and I believe that folks are really we're really engaged in understanding how we can advance climate and energy justice, not just in this legislative session, but beyond, and continuing this momentum and building on this momentum and creating a paradigm shift that will advance justice and equity in our economy, in our energy sector, and really focus on justice as a as our driver for a lot of policy and a lot of change that we want to make in Virginia. So I really hope that that resonated with legislators, and I hope that was that the main takeaway.
Yeah, I think just building on that a little bit, we have the Environmental Justice Act in Virginia. It was a historic piece of legislation, but we don't have environmental justice in Virginia yet. And as Kadesh was just saying, this is going to be the work for a long time. It's going to take deep work and intentional work to ensure that we do see justice. And so I think just kind of making clear that there's still a lot to do, and that there are people who are excited for the work, committed to the work, and that we have ideas for how we can improve the state of environmental justice in Virginia, and that we are committed to the cause and committed to working with legislators to make that happen.
Yes, I totally agree. Needing to build coalition, because this is definitely going to be a long haul effort, and it's going to take all hands on deck. So that was the last question that I have for you all. Thank you all so much, both of you, Emily and Kadesh, for being here today to help recap this awesome event. Great job to everyone who participated. I know they're not all on the call right now, but especially to you, Kadesh. I know you worked so hard. And also you too, Emily. It's been a real team effort. So thanks for being here today to share with us. Lastly, I just want to say to those watching at home, thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to keep up with us by joining our newsletter. You can hop on at this link here on the StreamYard screen. So please feel free to do so. And we will see you all next week at 12 o'clock, same time, same place.